Hello, welcome to Making Revenue Tick. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Aaron. Hello, Aaron.
Hey, good morning.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited for this conversation today. I've been
I'm so excited.
waiting weeks for us to actually do this because we've been talking about it for a while now, and it's ready. It's time.
Yeah, I know, right? I think that this all came from, we met through Pavilion, right? And we were
Yeah, exactly right.
we had a bunch of conversations and basically
Sure.
became like best mates. And
Yeah,
we were
the
thinking
best
like,
of mates. Yeah, absolutely.
we were thinking like, there's so many interesting topics that we're talking about, but just in a
Totally.
one-to-one call, it would be a crime not to go and try and do something that we can put out in public.
For sure.
And you've been through this amazing journey, which I think which frames a lot of this discussion in a really nice way. But basically the overall theme is we're in a new year at part of a massive inflection point in terms of the way that tech has had to pivot. And you've been part of that pivot.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
It's like, how do we deal with the theme of 2024, which we'll talk about in just a second. But
Sure.
I remember one of those first conversations that we had, you told me about the dinner that you went to at Pavilion. And it's a topic of conversation, which we decided would be the perfect thing to talk about in this podcast. What was that?
That's right.
You had?
Yeah. So, one of my personal goals, kind of coming out of 23 and into 24 was really to start to plug in and get outside of my bubble that I had been in sales development, business development, top of funnel, right? And one of the things that became abundantly clear, that's kind of like my secret sauce or a little bit unique to me, is I actually really enjoy the friction between sales and marketing. And so at this Pavilion dinner, I was just kind of hearing both sides of that discussion. And one of these CMOs that I was just having a chat with was kind of saying, hey, I have these 8 SDRs today. I have a very meager budget for 24. And my response to that was, well, what if those 8 could produce as if they were 20? And we were just off to the side, and everyone kind of rotated and looked to be like, oh, who is this Aaron Rissler character? And what did he just say? And how do I get some of that? Right. And so as we kind of unpack a little bit of how I think about that today, that's the thing that was for me kind of a bit of the aha moment, as well as the gospel that I'm trying to share with you and the listeners today, as well as just trying to be able to be a good steward of the vocation of sales development, business development, and top of funnel. Like, let's share with the world how we can make this better for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we think about it, that guy was talking about the fact that he had limited budget and pressure. But just think about it from a management perspective or from a rep perspective. It absolutely sucks to be in a team where you are 20 and only a couple are over target and everyone else is failing. So it's not an environment that is good for anyone. So I suppose that you could easily get some people negging this conversation and saying, well, you want to talk about getting the performance of 20 from a team of 8. But yeah, what's the alternative? The performance of 8 from a team of 20? Who's that good for, you know?
Well, absolutely. I mean, and just think of all of the layers of complexity there, right? So from just an overhead perspective, it's hard to just manage. And obviously the ratios have changed pretty significantly kind of from 2019 to today, right? And so in many cases, that's what? Maybe a team lead and a manager, right? That are also, in many cases, this is their first time leading people. And this is the first time that they're learning how to really have the span of control and set the operating motion, the sales motion for that squad. So that's the first piece of, from an IC's perspective, it's like, how much coaching am I getting? How much insight am I getting? And how am I going to be productive? And then if you go up a layer to the manager, right? Like if you're not keeping all of those hungry and eager SDRs fed, that's going to really affect your culture, right? And that toxicity has been pervasive. And, I've been there. I've been through that, which is like, hey, I'm doing my damnedest to be able to provide for this squad. And now I need you to really dig in and lean into the goals that we have signed up for as a business.
Yeah, 100% right. And it's like, it's incredibly hard to recover as a business if you start getting a bunch of really bad Glassdoor reviews.
Oh, for sure.
Puts on rep view that your quote is unattainable, and then you want to try and, when you fix those problems, go back out to market and hire people, and they're like, I'm not working for that company. Have you read the review?
Yes. I mean, it sounds like you've lived this. I think the thing that, a wise mentor once shared with me was culture and just your own team brand is something that's built over months, but can be lost in hours or days. Right. And so when you think about those Glassdoor reviews, it's really hard to unwind externally what's happening inside of your business.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. There might be some people watching this, Aaron, who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet. So for the
for sure.
benefit of them, could you tell us a little bit about who is this incredible human that I'm speaking to today?
So I think first things first, I'm a human, right? So let's talk about, so I'm a girl dad. I have 2 daughters, 4 and 2, been married here for just coming up on a decade. Outside of all of the things that I'm doing, whether that's like painting with glitter or running around the Boston area with the girls and just kind of living that Boston, New England lifestyle. Professionally, I've been building go-to-market machines for over 15 years, right? And so I've done early stage head of revenue a couple of times for kind of that seed to Series B round. A number of times had some great exits, some meh exits, and some good learnings along the way. But the thing that has been really exhilarating for me, the thing that I focus on, the thing that I'm doing today is top of funnel, right? And so I've kind of learned what scale looks like and how to really expand with Toast and Shopify, right? So some really good brands that maybe you might be familiar with, or the folks and listeners might be familiar with. And now, since joining Buyer's Edge platform, I'm doing that again, right? Which is how do we make sure that we have a really productive funnel and we understand that funnel. And then a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today is like, how do I impart some of those learnings of being able to get the productivity of 20 out of a headcount of 8. Here, it's just a bit different, right, in terms of scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, let's unpick the brain of a VP of inside sales.
Yeah, let's do it.
so I know like Sam Jacobs talks about this a lot, and we've had conversations. Sure. Like 2021, 2022 was like growth at all costs, right?
Absolutely. Been there.
I would claim like 2023 was, well, 1, panic, but then 2, retain. We need to retain our best people. We need to retain our customer base, and probably we have to retract because we did overhire. We were growing at all costs, and actually it's just not sustainable, and it just doesn't work anymore. In your opinion, what's 2024?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, and this sounds so simplistic, but I think it's important for us in any of these pendulum swings to just like be mindful of the fundamentals, right? At the end of the day, the spirit of top of funnel, the purpose of my role, my vocation of sales development and business development is solving for revenue. It's not pipeline, right? And so it's not just about being able to say, hey, I'm putting meetings on the board, or these meetings held, or here's how much pipeline we have. It's about, let me fully understand the volume, velocity in dollars that we're adding to the P&L every single month, day, quarter, choose your time horizon. So if I had to summarize 24, and the way that I'm thinking about it here is 24 is solving for the fundamentals and solving for revenue.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. Well, let's take people from the streets of Boston up into the 30,000 feet view.
Yeah.
What's going wrong? What's going wrong in the market that means we're even having this discussion?
Yeah. So I think there's been so many flashes in the pan. So I'm kind of back in the independent restaurant space. So I'm going to use a lot of restaurant metaphors along the way, if that's okay. Sure. I think what has happened is we kind of forgot that these are humans that are on our team. And so instead of just in a spreadsheet, right, as a VP, I'm looking at dashboard spreadsheets, columns all day long, and really taking the humanality out of the role. That's something that I think we should touch on today. I think another thing that I would talk about is just AI. Like if I were to just like have the word cloud of 23, AI would be like the biggest to do things on there. And I think at the beginning, it was like AI is going to replace sales development in its entirety. Like we don't need anyone ever. I think that is proven to be untrue. It's a great tool, another tool in the tool belt, but hopefully we can talk on that as well. And I think the other thing to talk about is enablement and just really ensuring that there's this kind of mindset of coaching and how are we getting 1% better across the squad every single day.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I have amazing news for everyone, which is just from my LinkedIn inbox, I've discovered that I can run run my whole business without having to do any work. I get all of my business on autopilot. I can win clients on autopilot. I can even source candidates and recruit on autopilot just using AI, which anyone who has a LinkedIn inbox will know that those messages are not true.
Yeah.
So AI is an amazing accomplice. It's like having a team around you, but it ain't going to solve the problem. And the sooner we realize that, the better, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think the other thing to think about too is at its core, that team, the humans that are kind of showing up every single day, AI can either be a force for good or a force for destruction, right? So when you think about that team, it's about one, of course, how you're like training the model. It's how you're applying that to your daily life. But if you don't invest in the people, if you're not building the team correctly, then you start to have this like amplification or this catalyst for destruction in the market, and they're waving your flag in front of all of your targets, in front of your prospects every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you could even say it was like, personalization was the big buzzword of 2023, but actually it's about being more human. And the more human you can be, as a manager, as a business, as a rep, the better, because we're solving customers' problems, right?
That's right. And at the end of the day, right, when you think about all the things that player could do, in my view, the most important thing is to say, how do we have two-way communication, whether that's a video call like this, whether that's in person, whether that's a phone call, and all those things have like varying costs associated with them and opportunity costs associated with them. But you need to have at its core the right human in the right role to be able to execute that conversation correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big thing of this 30,000 feet view, and a big overused term from right now, but it's basically rooted in complete truth, which is it's the era of doing more with less. But it's not just more, is it?
Yeah.
What does it mean to you?
Yeah, so let's talk about more, right? And so when I think about the amplification of what worked, if I were to go back in the way back machine, right? When I think about all of these sales tools, whether that's the Gong, Sales Loft, high velocity sales by Salesforce, right? What the spirit of those tools were designed to do is great. It's incredible. It gives the rep an immense amount of power. What ends up happening is once you get into that and everybody's doing that, then you start to get responses from whether it's email providers like Gmail, Google, right? Being able to say, hey, listen, we're going to kind of dial this back on our spam policy. And we're not just going to let anybody just be able to wake up, have their first cup of coffee and smash the send button to 1,200 messages into the market times however many reps, times however many competitors you have, times this many people, right? And so when I think about doing more with less, it's about really being surgical in really building measuring instruments to say what's working and what's not, and then cutting back and out what's not, and then doubling down on what is, right? So when I think about just AI in general, the way that I think about it, the way that I'm baking that into the process today is they are great research assistants, right? And so if there are ways for me to say, hey, what is pre-call research today? How do you do that? What data points are you trying to pull? How do you ensure that those data points align with your ICP or this persona that falls under that ICP? How can I get some some flow, whether that's in Clay or something else, to be able to enrich the data set, pull these different data points, and then populate that in, call it a tweet or some sort of like summary for you. So that way, whether it's 2 minutes before a call, you can just like rip through this to sound relevant and timely, as opposed to just like the kind of industry level personalization or the account level personalization. But now you can kind of even go down even further and really be able to connect with that person on the other end of the phone regardless.
Yeah, I love it. And we've all seen this, and we've probably been on both sides of it. But the kind of classic way that business is with scaling in the way back when machine
Sure.
was right. We've got reps doing this right now. You know, our average deal size is this. If we just add another rep, then we just add that much more revenue to our business, right? What's your problem with the way that thinking ended up?
Well, my first problem is that was me in the way back machine, right? Where you're just like, oh, this spreadsheet, if I just drag it to infinity, like we're just going to be the dominant leader in our space, right? So I think it starts with a little bit of accountability to myself and a little vulnerability that I thought I was cute and I thought I was doing like some really interesting and innovative things by just dragging spreadsheets out. I think the thing that caught me in the way that I'm thinking now into 24 is that I'm actually seeing a decreasing yield as you increase the complexity of your business. And complexity in this example would be humans. If you add more people, it's not like all of a sudden your attainment, the average attainment rate is somewhere between, call it 75% and 85% attainment across a team. Sure. It isn't necessarily if you just in continuum add people that you're going to be within that strike zone, right? It's going to get even more complex as you have cohorts of onboarding classes, as your product changes, as you start to really kind of get out into the outer reaches of size and scale, right? And so what I try to do and what I'm kind of coming back to in fundamentals is, okay, as a VP with layers in between, it's what does your ride along process look like? Like how many ICs, how many SDRs are you sitting with on a monthly basis to watch their flow? Right. And so what I'm noticing is I have been a part of some incredibly, I call them generous organizations that are willing to make investments in teams and in individuals with different tools and technologies, whether that's, things like Gong or others. But what I'm noticing is that a lot of those things are doing one of two things. One, just pure shelfware. Hey, we have this thing. We bought it. We had really good intentions. We've implemented 15% of the solution, but nobody's using it tactically day to day. So that's kind of it's on the shelf. Right. The other thing is like when it comes to like the 15 or 20% adoption as opposed to the full adoption, it's like, what you've really done is just added a bunch of administrative steps to the IC's job. So that way, people like me and maybe people like you, Richard, have these beautiful dashboards that are like reporting out exactly what you need to see, but it's actually not creating any sort of value for the person other than just like 6 more clicks per record. Yeah. Right? And so that's slowing them down. It's causing a bunch of friction in the process. It's quite candidly, to go back to the human, when I sit down with those ICs and I'm like, this is not logical. This seems frustrating. And they'll just cut me off and they'll be like, no, Aaron, this sucks. Yeah. Right? And so as a result, I have to then figure out, okay, who are my customers? And of course, in the pipeline world, most people would say, oh, those are the AEs, these are the closers, these are the people that are generating the revenue for the business, are my customers. But the stakeholders, the people that I'm really solving for every single day is my team. Right? Mm-hmm. How do I make it so that the SDR that's being called every single day to hear no dozens upon dozens of times has the best possible experience, feels empowered that they have, the shield to be able to deflect any objection or be able to kind of go into any process and have just a really good talk track and have the confidence in our solution to be able to have an authentic conversation with a prospect on the other end of the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the growth at all costs phase, we were even hearing about clients going, look, our salespeople have been pulled into admin. So their solution was to hire sales admin resource.
Yeah, totally.
Like, add more people to the problem rather than realizing, well, what's actually happened is in the last 12 board meetings, we've had 6 questions about what about that KPI or what about this view of that data, which has then become another field, another step in our sales process. And we've designed this thing that actually the reps hate. And more importantly, it's probably our same importance, your customers hate. It's kind of like, hey, Mr. Customer, sorry, you can't actually do that because we've got to go and take you through our sales process, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, it really chops up an organic conversation for sure. Mm. And then, as us who are very experienced buyers, for me, and maybe this is a quick aside, right? So if you find my contact information in any of the data providers and call me, chances are I'll say hello. Of the like cohort of people that answer their phone or not, my wife would absolutely say I'm the guy that answers the phone, because I just want to hear like, what's your pitch, or how are you trying to do this? And you can absolutely tell those people that have a very rigorous buying process where they're like, okay, I'm on this game, so I'll have some fun with them, right? Like, it's just like, let's see how we can kind of have this conversation be beneficial to both of us, me entertaining and learn your process, and you get what you want to see if I'm qualified or not, right? And so when I think about just the assets, the people on the team, and the tools at my disposal to be able to get to the revenue number, there are often times where I'm willing to trade an additional like 2, 3, 4 SDRs for some wizard that it can help me with either automating workflows or re-architect our Salesforce instance to be able to provide a much better experience for the SDR and a much clearer understanding, and clearer meaning automated expectation of what the yield of that call or what that conversation might look like.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the other things you said about, dragging the spreadsheet and, having a beautiful growth curve that goes like this. There's a naivety from people in Europe about America. We just need to break into America. And the same the other way, right? America with Europe. But if you're talking about expanding across, nationally in America or internationally, that is completely out the window. And we've seen loads of examples where people go, well, this is what's working in America, so we'll just replicate those metrics, and that's what we should expect in EMEA. And it's like, what do you mean EMEA? EMEA is like Africa, the whole of Europe. Like, how crazy is that?
It's wild. And again, in kind of the like the scar tissue I've built up over the years, I used to think that way. And so now obviously I have a much different understanding of the nuance of like, okay, so what is it like? How do Germans like to buy? And how is that different than French versus, the Portuguese, right? And so when you think about whether it's cultural buying practices or standards, or a lot of it, quite candidly, like how you would contact one of your targets in each of those countries, they all come with their own sort of ethical standards, code of conduct, and in many cases, legal standards that you have to adhere to. And so when I think about just merely saying, hey, we need to pop up a squad in the Netherlands, for example, there's a lot more of the conversation that needs to happen. And I think, one of my old colleagues said it best about the German market is like, there's this common misconception about how you can start to work this market just because it is so affluent and there's such an opportunity there, where a lot of Americans will like fly over to set up shop and they end up swimming home because they just spend so much in order to unlock that growth and unlock that market.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm picturing like frozen Leonardo DiCaprio. It's not a good idea.
There it is.
So obviously, like before, again, the traditional thinking was, right, we want like big step change. We want to go from here to here, 2x. Everyone talks about, we're going to 2x, 5x, 10x, but it's less like that, right? We had a discussion around how it's more like increments, small.
That's right.
Changes over a period. Talk to us about how you're seeing incremental versus step.
Yeah. So I think it really depends, of course, on your business. So terrible sales answer, but that is what you're going to get, is it depends. I think the thing that I would say is, let me kind of bucket the type of listeners that might be on the call today. The first bucket would be, hey, I'm doing this by myself. I'm either an individual contributor, or I'm kind of the seed round, I'm the founder, or I'm just kind of the early stage and really trying to rationalize this problem and solve for it. For that, it's about really focusing on what is your measurement instrument to be able to say, in, call it net 30 days, net 60 days, whatever that time horizon is, did that work or not? And in many cases, the way that I think about that at any stage of business is through the concept of campaigns. Okay, what is the title of this campaign? What's your hypothesis of this campaign? Who are we targeting? And what are the metrics that we're going to look at in some sort of retrospective to say that worked, we need to do more of that, or that didn't work, we're going to stop, or we're going to do it but tweak a few things. right? So that's kind of like the first group. The next group would say, hey, this is kind of the establishing. This would be the 8, maybe to 20 SDR teams that are out there, maybe 2 managers, maybe a manager and a couple team leads, something like that, where you're trying to get visibility around, hey, this thing is working to an extent, but I'm trying to really realize that growth that I've been either passed down or been a part of that conversation, right? And for those folks, it's about, okay, hopefully you already have those measuring instruments. You understand the levers that are at your disposal. That's when I kind of go down to the ground floor and say, okay, what do those ride-alongs look like? How are we using the tools? And when I think about what's in the control of your department, it's absolutely who are we targeting in terms of accounts? Like, what is that ICP, and how have you analyzed that against past opportunities, prior performance, right? To be able to say, this is a good list for us to go after. Yeah. The next layer down is, does my team know exactly how to kind of either jersey match or pattern match based on those like cases? And do we have marketing assets to help warm up that story? And then the last piece would be, instead of just kind of going in cold and just being like, hey, have you heard of us? I'm pitching the meeting or I'm pitching the demo. It's much more advanced now, right? Buyers are much more savvy and are looking for value. And what is that kind of point of value that you're providing or trading for their time? So whether that's either a case study, some industry information, what their competitors are doing, or some sort of asset that they can walk away with, regardless if they take the meeting or not, they're able to be a bit smarter, leaving that conversation a bit more educated than you found it. Then when you kind of go up the scale, so to the scale that I'm at today or what we were at Toast and in Shopify, I think the answer is, okay, so what's actually converting? It's a series of trade-offs, right? And so when you think about either developing pipeline for different business units, different markets, or different product lines, that's when you start to say, okay, what are the tools and how are we able to, I don't know, action those tools and teams to be able to double down on the things that are yielding the predictability and pipeline requirements? And how are we actually doing the hard thing, which is saying no to things that are either slowing down your team or not delivering against the anticipated outcome of that campaign?
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And so let's say you are one of those personas or humans
Sure.
that we've talked about that might be listening to this.
Yeah.
What do you think are some of the pains? So they've got challenges, they've got pains, they've got frustration. What are some of the things that you think that they will be experiencing that we're going to be able to help them with through our conversation?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there, and I'll take it at different layers within the organization. Yeah. So for this, I think it makes sense most, at least from my experience, I think the thing that I'll take the lens through is through the management layer. Right. Okay. So say you're a manager and you have a team, and of that team, when you think about quota attainment, you have what I might call bad breath versus no breath. Right. So you have that player on your team that's consistently delivering somewhere between, like, call it 50, I think the line is like 55% to like 70%. And there's like this awesome opportunity to be able to invest in that individual. You know that they're capable, but you're not seeing either consistency or the hunger, right? And so what I would say in 24 is, based on where we are in terms of the expectations of the team, based on where we are in terms of the labor market, there is incredible talent out there that is waiting to be your next rock star. It's time to really put some bands around the expectation that you have for that role, and either have a hard conversation, that awkward conversation that you've procrastinated on for the past quarter or months, and be able to kind of really drive them towards success, or ask them if there's a different either role in the organization, if that's how your business operates, or just say, hey, you're going to be able to graduate out of this program. It's time for us to kind of part ways as friends, right? So that's the kind of the first thing. The second thing I'd say is, once you do the analysis of your tech stack and what's serving you and what's not serving you, really either partnering internally with a RevOps, SalesOps, or some sort of automation team to make sure that all of the plumbing is connected as you would like it. Right. And if not, being able to partner with either a third party, like a consulting firm, or somebody who's able to really ensure that all of your systems and processes are, one, connected, because sometimes that's actually not true, two, serving your SDRs and BDRs in a meaningful way, whether that's pre-research that I mentioned earlier, or auto advancing either stages or fields or any of the things that's necessary in terms of follow-up, right? Now we have all these AI bots that are on calls with us every single day that are able to summarize notes. Are those populating into Salesforce? Are those saving to a draft as a follow-up email with next steps? And then is Lavender making sure that everything sounds good along the way? If not, that's the thing that I would focus on for you. And then finally, I think the last thing that we're going to talk about is just, and really to me, the most important part is the humans. How are they doing, and how is their relationship either with the manager or with the account executive that they're supporting?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so being able to have clearly defined roles and goals between AE and SDR is just absolutely critical. And I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting in some sort of meeting room with managers who are speaking about their teams where it's like, of all the people working, these 6 pairings are not working, super toxic, and one of them's either going to churn out or we're just not going to get pipeline out of them. And then it's up to me to resolve that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And our good friend David Wilkins wrote a book about that exact problem between AE and SDR alignment.
Yeah.
There you go, David. We'll put the link in below.
Yeah, sounds good.
So, Aaron, VP of Inside Sales. First principles. Let's talk about, as a VP of Inside Sales, running a large team, what are some of the first principles that you apply into the way that you structure your organization and you build your organization?
Yeah. So, as a new VP of Inside Sales here at Buyer's Edge, the first thing that I am really spreading the gospel of is it's about revenue, right? Not pipeline. And so that has a follow-on effect, which is my second first principles, which is attribution models matter, right? It used to be very much like a marketing thing. Now it's absolutely a sales and business development thing. So being able to say, we are able to understand where this pipeline is going to come from, and we are able to predict how it's going to translate into revenue is critical, right? And then the last thing that I would say is really understanding how we're sourcing candidates, how we're onboarding those candidates, and how we're continually enabling those candidates to be the future sellers of the organization, right? So the talent under the sales development team.
Yeah, absolutely.
If everyone can agree on that, then you're going to be in a really good spot.
100%, right? If you get that part right, this should be the engine for the rest of your business.
Absolutely.
We all started as sales development reps, right? I mean, or whatever it was called when we started, depending on our age. Sure. Let's talk about unit economics. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So in any new business, the first thing that I'm trying to wrap my arms around is, what is the budget, right? And what is the headcount plan? And then the next thing I want to jump off of is, okay, what is my budget as a real, I guess, percentage or a piece of the total go-to-market spend, right? And so what I'm really trying to do there is I'm trying to understand the cost or the decision cost of allocating a marginal dollar to marketing and some sort of like program spend versus allocating that work or unit of work to one of my SDRs, right? And so what I'm trying to do there is really say, okay, what is that percentage of the marketing budget compared to the sales development budget? And then what is that current cost of acquisition? And how does that cost of acquisition change based on attribution or different channel by which different pieces of pipeline are entering into your funnel and then resulting in revenue for your business? So once you start to do all of that, the next thing that you want to do is just say, okay, so what are the targets, right? What are the KPIs of your business? And each of those KPIs should ultimately roll up to the unit economics of your business. And if they don't, you need to communicate that to like the C-suite, to the executive management team fast. Because in my experience, when those things don't align or if they don't make sense or if there's no plan in place to say, hey, yeah, it's red now, but here's how I get it to yellow and this is where we're going to end up on green, that's the thing that's going to end up causing you some real pain in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I know we sort of bashed AI a little bit just because it's so poorly used by so many people in terms of the automation of things that don't work.
Yeah.
But it's not bad, right? Is it? And you need to automate certain things. So talk to me about 2024, what does automation look like for you, and how are you going to use it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier in the conversation, but I see AI as supremely helpful as a research assistant, right? That side of the house to be able to pull up what are my talking points and how am I going to frame this conversation if that call connects in a really quick way. That for me is something that I've seen a ton of SDRs get caught up in, whether it's analysis paralysis or on the other side, like, ooh, that's too much work. I don't do that. Like, I'm good enough. I've been around long enough to be able to just pick up the phone and say hi. That's something that I'm spending a lot of time focusing on and trying to build here. The next thing is really saying, hey, how do I summarize these long form conversations where what I'm trying to do is give you my attention and focus 100% on you versus trying to take notes, ignoring slacks that are off to my other screen here. Being able to capture the nuance of the conversation, summarize that up, and then serve that out with OATs, right? Owners, actions, and timelines. That is a perfect thing for AI to do. But when it comes to being human, when it comes to an authentic conversation, that's squarely in the realm of what's in control for an SDR every single day.
Yeah, it's such a good point, isn't it? I remember, we were salespeople before AI and before recording, right?
Yeah.
And you never had these summaries. And we know this in sales. Half of the value is what they didn't say.
Yeah. Sure.
So you can't just have transcriptions. You've got to be able to have tools that go, right, cool. Actually, this is an important part of the conversation, particularly to feed back into the rep and the coach to be able to improve that, rather than just like, a rep randomly scribbling notes, which goes into Salesforce, and then suddenly that's the truth.
Yeah, you're right.
Massively misunderstood.
Yeah, and we've all been on the other side of that, right? And so whether that's you as an account executive, where you're like, what is this, and what was I handed, and the expectation of what was sold in terms of the meeting and the value they were going to get out of the meeting to what I received is completely off. Or even if you go out even a layer bigger than that, whole teams that have like no fundamental understanding of what the product actually does and how it serves the prospect and future customers, where you then have to be like, it sounds like you weren't picking up on the subtle cues and this person was just politely trying to grin you off the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just reminded of like the Zig Ziglar thing. I'm not sure if you heard that one, but it's
which one? There's a zillion. Yeah.
It might not come across particularly well, but it was like, I'm going to cut this out, mate, because I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on.
You reset. Yeah, sure.
Reset. Okay. I'm the one that's ruining this. Cool. So we've talked a bit about automation. So what about the people side? So how do you, as a leader of salespeople, let humans be humans?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you have to do is realize, one, it starts from the top, right? It starts from me, and not trying to jam like we have been doing for years, all of the different uniqueness, the magic of every single person into this is what the square box of an SDR at our company looks like, and allowing them the space to be themselves, right? That is critical. And so that's not to say that I don't have a rubric or some sort of matrix in which I want to evaluate what I believe are the essential skills of an incredible rep here. And I'm happy to kind of share those if you're curious.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the things that I'm really looking for kind of boil down to coachability, resilience, individual or personal development, that propensity to do so, self-awareness, creativity, confidence, their internal desire for success or drive, and active listening. And so if you are able to pull those out, and those people can come from outside of the space, right? Whether that's for us coming from the back office of some sort of restaurant group or an operator, that can come from somebody that owns and operates, a detailing shop that says, hey, I want to come in and this is going to be the first time I've worked indoors in whatever, 5 years, 10 years, something like that. Every single person has the opportunity and capacity to illustrate those different qualities, right? It's about us and being able to think creatively in assessing those qualities that is ultimately going to contribute to the team. So that's how I'm judging it. And then to move to how do you let them be humans? I think, and everyone hates this, right? Which is micromanagement. Hey, I'm going to listen to every single gong call, and every single gong call that I review is going to have 15 like different points of clarification and improvement. It's like, can we move from the like fine tip pen to the wide brush, paintbrush? And it's like, what are the broad strokes, and how do I ensure that I have a good understanding of what's going to actually move you along in a successful conversation versus like trying to just poke and jab along the way and kind of get at you as a human.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one, right? When you're listening back to your own calls, a lot of people still absolutely hate it. But as a coach, when you hear lots of things wrong, the temptation is to try and fix a lot of those things. But if you can fix one thing every time you coach,
that's right,
very quickly is going to add up to a huge difference over time.
And,
right?
and the thing that's been really successful for me, and I've seen success across different businesses, is when everyone can kind of be accountable to and start to listen to their own calls. Of course, that's important. But I think the thing that's even more important is if everyone's good with having their calls recorded, kind of taking the people that are successful at that skill and then having those people that are really have an opportunity there to be successful in that skill, listening to that for the cross-pollination is really where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the type of salespeople that you like to hire. So I know that when I was first in tech sales, you know, lead generation was where I focused. And it was like, you know, inbound, then you moved to outbound, then you moved to kind of enterprise. But, and it was a real career path to do the hard miles of being an outbound prospector to become a lead or a salesperson. Those skills fundamentally set up my career. If I hadn't done that role, I would never have had the career that I had. But if you went back a few years ago and we talked about hiring for SDRs, which we did a lot of, the first question I would get asked by every SDR was, how quickly can I get promoted to AE? So what's your view on, do you see the SDR role as very much a conveyor belt for talent, or is it a career, or what does that look like for you?
It's such a challenging question because the answer for me is both. When I look at teams that I've had at Toast, Shopify, and here, I have career BDRs. They're like, hey, this is my thing, just like it's my thing, right? Like a lot of people ask me, why aren't you head of sales again or a CRO or have that full umbrella of responsibility? It's because it's really what I enjoy. I'm really good at it. I'm a hunter. I love going on to that next thing and being able to have this type of conversation. And that is absolutely true for a lot of individual contributors. What I'd say is that's the minority in most cases. A majority is this is the conveyor belt into a larger sales role. So when I look at like what I might call positive attrition of teams that I work with, usually 80% of that is off to some sort of account executive role and then off to that kind of thing. Another 80%, so that's 80, another 10% is probably management of BDRs, SDRs, and then the final 10% would be like outside department, marketing, rev ops, sales ops, those types of roles. I think the thing to consider, and what I would say to the listeners here is, back at Grow at All Costs and when everything was ripping, there was a real hunger from TA on our team to say, hey, I know that this person's only been enrolled for 9 months. We need more AEs. They're ready. Like, let's just go. That's not the case anymore. And unfortunately, the labor market hasn't figured that out yet, right? So they thought they earned the right to progress into that AE role because of the way the business was moving, but it wasn't really clear to me then or now that within 9 months, you can kind of master the art of the outbound and inbound process and everything that kind of comes along with being that junior level sales professional. What I'd say for me, based on the complexity of the businesses that I've been a part of, realistically, that's more like 18 months, 2 years, right? And if I'm able to set that expectation early, that's going to be better for you. It's better for us. And then that really starts to be able to provide that flow of talent to other departments within the org.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good that that's happened in a way, and that you have to take good meaning from it, which is
Totally.
when I started as an SDR back in 2007, the people I was learning from had been in the role 5-6 years, and they were all like, mid 40s, 50. They were incredible at what they did. It was like listening to a CEO having conversations, the way that they approached it. Right. I learned so much through osmosis and asking questions from these sorts of people. And I think that kind of talent pool dried away because there was so much demand for managers, leaders, AEs, that talent, like you say, really too quickly got ripped up into that next layer. And now a lot of those people are finding themselves out of work or not able to sustain their salary.
And that's the most saddening part of the whole thing, which was, the next layer up. Sure, you got the promotion, but attrition, high attrition, was modeled into those spreadsheets that you didn't see, which was like, I don't care. I think that even if we get to 30%, 40% attrition of AEs because the BDR didn't learn enough to be able to be developed to hit their revenue number, that's okay. We always have more folks on the other side. And so for me, that's just catastrophic for the culture of the business, one. And two, I'm happy to share that is definitely changing in 24.
Yeah, 100%. And what I really like about it is SDR, MDR, BDR, SDR, whatever you want to call it, was seen as like a cheaper way to acquire customers. And a lot of people cut corners in terms of the sort of people that they hire. But now with people like you and a whole group of very seasoned and very experienced and excellent sales leaders taking that acquisition part of the business, because it is so hard. It's really hard to do this part of the process, but your business doesn't work without it. So because you've got higher caliber of leaders, because the people are being paid more, because there is more tools, there's more opportunities. If you get this stuff right, they have a good set of tools, they have the right coaching, they're getting actual, they're getting feedback and getting development. Actually, what you're going to get as a net result is a much more successful team with way more people being on target, over target, building the skill sets they need to actually go and have then great careers and become future AEs, future rock star sales leaders, and future leaders of businesses.
I can't agree more. And the way that I might restate that or regurgitate that back to you is saying what you're really doing is de-risking the sales talent funnel for your business. And once you start to adopt this kind of mindset, I promise you it's going to pay dividends, because it has, certainly for me, across these different organizations. And I have a high degree of confidence that it will do the same for you.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, look, Aaron, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. This has been great. Hopefully we can do another one in the future.
Yeah, 100%. It's my dream. Why I love to have these sorts of conversations is because for me, finding great leaders who I know that if we were to place talent within those organizations, they would love to work with people like you, is what it's all about for me. So the fact you prepared to spend your time sharing your own story, sharing the things that you've learned, the hard earned lessons, as well as what you think the future is going to look like, I really appreciate it, because the more people that can learn from leaders like you and have the opportunity to work with leaders like you, I think the better the reputation of tech sales and sales development is going to be in the marketplace. So I can't thank you enough for spending your time.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate the time and the platform. And for all of you listening, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, just Aaron Rissler. But yeah, hopefully I'll get the opportunity to work with many of you, some of you, all of you in the coming weeks, years, and everything in between. So thanks.
Oh, wonderful. Watch this space. Well, look, Aaron, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
Cheers.